Hey, it's Taxquips time from TaxMama.com. Today, TaxMama wants to tell you what the IRS, the Taxpayer Advocate, and a coalition of tax professionals just did for you. Well, my friends, last week was an interesting week in Taxland. Aaron Collins, the taxpayer advocate, testified before Congress about the millions of 2020 paper file tax returns, amended payroll tax returns, and paper check payments that are still unprocessed. Millions of people are waiting for refunds from 2020. Ironically, last year, the IRS closed down their Fresno facility, which was primarily dedicated to processing paper returns and communications. Why? Because it was scheduled to close before COVID came along, and they just continued and closed it. In addition, people who had paid by check instead of electronically are still reporting that their payments have not been posted to their taxpayer accounts. Millions more people received notices from the IRS and were required to respond by either sending snail mail or sitting on hold with the IRS phone, sometimes for hours. The bulk of those paper responses have not been processed. As a result, taxpayers are getting threatening collections notices even though they have filed amended returns showing no balance due, they have paid their tax debts by paper check, or they've responded to IRS notices to explain why the IRS computer didn't find income reported in a place on the tax return where the IRS computer was not expecting to find it. Ms. Collins made several recommendations to fix some of these problems, and I gave you the link to her entire testimony above. One recommendation was to prioritize the processing of original and amended paper tax returns through an all-hands-on-deck surge strategy. Also last week, a coalition of tax and legal professional societies had a meeting discussing the letters that they have sent to the IRS, the U.S. Treasury, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, asking for some immediate relief from all of those erroneous notices. The IRS suspends notices. The very next day, the IRS released this announcement. The IRS announced today the suspension of more than a dozen additional letters, including the mailing of automated collection notices normally issued when a taxpayer owes additional tax and the IRS has no record of a taxpayer filing a tax return. The good news. This is great news for the millions of innocent taxpayers who've been terrorized by notices of unfiled returns or notices of intent to levy, despite having filed and paid their taxes, sometimes nearly a year ago. These notices have caused an intense hardship for taxpayers who filed and paid in good faith on paper, or who made mistakes and amended their tax returns on paper. Since the IRS computer didn't get the data input into the system, the automated collection system went to work spewing out notice after notice, and these taxpayers had to invest their own time, sometimes taking time off from work to sit in the long IRS phone queue and then getting no help, or they had to pay a tax professional to handle it for them, even though they owed nothing. And to make it worse, even tax professionals had a hard time reaching the IRS and getting these issues addressed and resolved. Why? Because since the tax returns and the payments were not in the system, no one could reach out into that paper mountain to find and enter the correct client's documents. So this automated persecution is about to stop. No new automated notices are being sent out. The bad news. What's the bad news side of this for taxpayers? There are also millions of taxpayers with significant balances due who have not paid their taxes. Many have made no effort to do anything about it, like setting up an installment agreement, applying for an offer in compromise, or even to increase their current withholding. They won't be getting these notices from the automated collection system, known as ACS, either. These notices are a wake-up call to get into compliance. Now they will just get deeper and deeper into tax trouble. And of course, there are the tax professionals who represent tax delinquents. The biggest source of new clients has been these IRS levy notices. Now that gravy train is stalled. Taxpayers in trouble will have to voluntarily seek out their help instead of making those panicked calls when they're about to lose their bank accounts or wages. What advice can I give you currently? Well, if you are one of those people who've been getting erroneous notices, ignore anything that arrives in the next week or two. Anything later than that, I suggest that you respond to it. If you know you are delinquent, either you owe money or you haven't filed tax returns, take care of this immediately. File the unfiled returns and make arrangements to pay your past due taxes. After all, this suspension isn't going to last long. It never does. And remember, you can find answers to all kinds of questions about taxes and business issues and EA education free. Where? Where else? At TaxMama.com.